I hated myself. I did not trust myself. I didn't trust I certainly didn't trust boys. I didn't trust people of the opposite sex, but most of all, I really blamed myself for many, many years. And to the point where I stopped associating my depression with what had happened, and it was just the depression. And so that's why it took me many years to realize, to make the connection, like, oh my gosh, because I knew around the time when I started becoming depressed. And then it wasn't until much later when I was like, that happened around that same time. Because I was a perfectly fine kid before that. When traumatic things happen to people, there's always a before and an after.
Welcome, my friends. I am Gary Scott, and this is the What If You Could podcast. And today, my guest is Cathelina Duvert. She's the author of The Box. It's a soulful exploration of resilience, forgiveness, and the transformative journey of healing. But she's so much more. So, welcome, my friend. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me here, Gary.
Yeah, we're gonna have some fun, but like I threatened you earlier, um, we're the What If You Could podcast. So I ask all my guests, Kathleen, what is your What If You Could?
Since the past few years have been all about my writing, I'm gonna say, what if I could um retire from my teaching job and devote my time full time to writing? Oh my gosh, I think so. Teaching, I have to say, does come with its challenges, but I do I do enjoy communicating with students on a daily basis because they have these young minds and they're cute and I love discussing things with them. I really do. But I have to say that writing has always been I wanna say writing has always been my life. It has always been there for me, and, once I got over the fear of putting myself out there through my writing, I felt like this is all that I wanna do. So what if I could retire from teaching in order to become a full-time writer? I think that that would come, of course, with its own challenges because there are times where I feel like I have no inspiration. I feel like I'm a dry well. I feel like I've lost my muse. And of course that would probably happen. Um, but I think at the same time, I would feel free to devote my time to the writing that I actually wanna do, some of the writing that's in my head that I put aside for now because it's not summertime. When summertime comes, yes, I could do all the things, but, so I feel like I would really come out of my shell if I were to retire from teaching.
So, of course, that leads to the next question of
Mhm.
what keeps us from packing our bags and moving to Key West like Ernest Hemingway and putting your feet in the sand and just go. Just I understand the realities of life, but I mean, when obviously I like books and I love authors. I'm fascinated by authors. I would love to be able to write something, but there's just nothing interesting in my head. Um, well, there's a lot of interesting stuff in my head, but no one wants it on paper. Um,
Uh,
what's that fear? Not just for you, but we all think of that, right? What if we could just run off to the Caribbean and do this or that? What do you think keeps us from doing it?
I think, we if we were to run off, our bills and mortgages would be running right behind us. You know,
Yeah, there's those things.
yeah. There are a lot of people who have children. I don't have a family. I don't have, yeah, I don't have a family. So I feel like maybe a lot of people, their children are keeping them tied to their everyday lives. Just being rooted in one place, I guess, knowing that I have to make my money through my work. Well, see, I said I have to. I don't necessarily have to because I can find other ways to support myself, right? Mm,
There's a man named Jim Rohn. Have you ever heard of Jim Rohn?
yes.
Love Jim Rohn. And he always says, you're not a tree. You could pick up and leave. Because
Yeah.
trees have deep down roots, but we're not. But the thing about writing is, like you say, you have those dry spells, and I've interviewed a lot of authors, love authors. Um, your first book, I say first because I know there'll be others. Your first book, The Box, is pretty deep in a personal sense. Her life unravels when she stumbles across a note hidden inside a painting gifted to her by her late mother. Is that true? I mean, did that come across, or that's just you writing a great novel?
That's just me writing the perfect novel.
I love it. Now, so you would then, like, I've talked to a lot of people where they like write their memoir, they write something about something that happened to them, right? And so they want to write again, but it's like that was such a powerful inspiration for them to get that message out that they
Mm,
just don't feel like there's more. And then
mm,
I've talked to prolific authors like my friend Harvey Nichols, who just writes. I think he's got 28 books now, who just writes
that's
and writes and
amazing.
writes, so, and he picked up and just moved to the Caribbean, and now he writes about the Caribbean. But, so what is that? What do you think
Mm.
is in you for the next? What do you think the passion is going to drive you for your next project, your next great novel?
So I have a lot of ideas. Not a lot. I have some ideas, but some really profound ideas, I think, for me. Um, as I said, that I've always been a writer. I went to school at I went to Hofstra University. I studied creative writing and literature there, and I've always turned to writing in order to, release my creative outlet. So at this time, like once I wasn't even done writing the box yet. I had not published it yet, and I had already thought of my next story, which involves a complex story about twins and identity, a pair of identical twins and their own identities. And it has I'm Haitian. My parents are both from Haiti, and I wanted to dive into my roots as a young Haitian American woman. And I wanted to do a little bit of research on my Haitian roots and give that to my main characters. I happen to have a twin sister as well. So I'm drawing from my life as somebody who was born here in America, who was taught, grew up in a Haitian culture. Our household was Haitian, but I'm very much American. And I remember going to Haiti when I was in my well, I was in high school the first time, and then after that, I was in I'm lying. I was much younger than high school. The second time I was around the high school, and the third time was in my 20s, and I remember feeling like I didn't belong. I felt like I didn't belong because I was born and raised in America, you know? I knew the language, I could hardly speak it. I didn't I felt like I was sort of like an imposter here. Yes, I'm saying that I'm Haitian, but I'm in the land of I'm in Haiti, and I'm not connecting with my fellow Haitian people. But so there has been a real understanding that me being Haitian American is very different than somebody born and raised in Haiti. And I want to explore that. So I feel like that's very, very important to me. I do want to explore that through the next novel that I write. And I've started working on that, but it's coming out piecemeal, and I think it scares me a little bit to dive into that. I think it scares me to go further into my culture. I think it scares me to face people who would probably laugh at me with the way that I speak Haitian Creole. There's a lot of fear behind that. And then I my sister and I decided to work on a different project where we would, uh, ask Haitians and Haitian Americans and Haitians from the diaspora to give us, their stories about community, them growing up as Haitians, and I we want to explore that as well. And again, that's like a major project that I feel very, very close to, that I feel very tied to, that I feel is important work. But then there's that fear again. Will I be accepted? Will they laugh at me? Will I be able to show up as this Haitian American who is learning about her culture? Why didn't I know more about my culture before? So there's a lot of things playing around in my head with that. And I also have other ideas of, my blogs. I write a blog about my experience with depression, and I want to bring that to print as a journal for other people who are suffering with depression. So I have a lot of these ideas in my head, and I use many, many excuses. I just published a blog post about the excuses that I use to keep myself from to keep myself safe, right? This is what we do with ourselves, right? We use our fears in a way to keep us safe, emotionally safe, and mentally safe. And I feel that that's what I'm doing with myself. But also, as much as I'm getting a chance to, I try to tell people about the things that I'm doing so that I can hold myself accountable. Because if I keep it to myself, nobody will ever know, and I won't have to face up to that. So I tell people about it so that I can actually do get the thing done.
No, but yeah, I'm sure. Yes, you did. But the beauty of what you've done is you just opened up 100 other questions, which is what I
Mhm,
love, 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 because that's how these conversations get started, and there's so much there. But I'm
mhm,
gonna go with the safety because fear and safety work together, right? We're afraid of something, so we try to be safe from it. And we all know
mhm,
that fear is just false evidence appearing real. So we have
mhm,
this false belief that if I just sell everything and move to the Caribbean, I love the Caribbean, so that's why I keep saying the Caribbean. I didn't know you were from Haiti though, but now it works. If we just sell everything, that somehow something won't work out.
right,
What if it doesn't work out? What if I get there and I can't write? And so fear has so much to do with trying to be safe. We protect ourselves from the big evil, a boogeyman. And the funny thing you said about start having the next book
mhm,
while you're finishing your first book. Excuse me, because almost every author I talk to has multiple books say that. They said,
mhm,
I got the idea for my next book while I was in my this book, and right, it just came flowing out. But the book that you're working on with Haiti, it's very possible that that book needs more time. Like I've talked to a lot of authors that said I started a book, it just wasn't there. I set it down, and 20 years later, I came back, and now it's a bestseller. But had I written it 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been the book it is now.
mhm,
So
mhm,
perhaps that one kind of sits for you while you're exploring your roots with your sister or doing what you feel you need to while
mhm,
you work on other projects. The book's not going
mhm,
to go away. Maybe it just needs to marinate a little bit.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I like that. Absolutely. Yeah, there's no reason to rush the creativity, right? Yeah.
Exactly,
Mhm,
exactly, and that just nothing gets done that way. You can't force yourself to write, you can't force yourself to work out, you can't force yourself to things. It has to be a natural thing. So
mhm,
your sister is a twin,
mhm,
and, I've always been fascinated by twins. I have friends who are twins, and I love the study about nature and nurture,
mhm,
about how twins could be so different
mhm.
based on, like, if their parents separated, one was raised by mom, one was raised by dad, or how they had.
Right.
Um, does your sister have the same issues with depression that you have?
No, she doesn't.
Where did it come from? Where did yours come from if she was just like you?
Well, so, we are fraternal twins. We're not identical. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it came from an experience that I had when I was 11 years old. It was, and I only realized that my depression came from that experience only a few years ago. Um, because throughout the years, I've been seeing therapists, and so I'm constantly reflecting on my experiences and issues and things that are going on with me. And it just so happened that when I was, I want to say, yeah, 12 years old, when I was 12 years old in the summer, I so I was I'm okay to talk about this. I don't have a problem. I don't shy away from talking about this, but I was sexually fondled by somebody who, and it really messed with me, me thinking that it was my fault. And when it happened, um I stuck up for myself. I approached him, and I gave him a good pounding because I was in the presence of other people. I was like, "Don't you ever do that to me again." And everybody, and at the time, it was like some we were playing this hide and seek in the summer. It was dark out, and he got me in the bushes. 12-year-old me was I was so innocent. 12-year-old me was just like, "Okay, let's hide in the bushes together." But he had other plans. And I'm so glad that I could laugh about it now because, at one point I couldn't laugh about it. Um, After that happened, I remember everybody reconvening after the game, and I saw who he was, and I literally pounded him on all over his back, whatever. I was like, "Don't you ever do that to me again." Me myself right now, I'm proud of that 12-year-old girl for doing that, for having done that. Everybody who was there was like kind of shocked, didn't know how to take it. People laughed it off, and but after that experience, I remember that night really feeling like, "Why did you let that happen? You're so stupid. How could you have possibly let that happen? It's all your fault." So I stopped being angry with him, and it was never about him. It was about what I allowed to happen. And I even got to the point where I was telling myself, like, "You weren't raped, so get over it," you know? Um, but it really, really messed with me. So, and I never shared what happened with an adult. So I let it marinate in my head for years, and then it translated to me being, um, I I hated myself. I did not trust myself. I didn't trust. I certainly didn't trust boys. I didn't trust people of the opposite sex, but um, most of all, I really blamed myself for many, many years, and and to the point where I stopped associating my depression with what had happened, and it was just the depression. And so that's why it took me many years to realize, to make the connection, like, oh my gosh, because I knew around the time when I started becoming depressed. And then it wasn't until much later when I was like, that happened around that same time. Because I was a perfectly fine kid before that. When traumatic things happen to people, there's always a before and an after. And so, like I said, it took me many years to realize that this is what had happened. Um, and it was interesting because a couple of years ago, I went into my storage unit looking for a particular poem that I had written, and I wanted to share it with my students. And among all my folders of things that I had written, I wrote so much about that incident. I had forgotten that I wrote those. I wrote poetry, I wrote short stories, all these things about what had happened that night. And so it was really heavy on my mind, but I never associated the depression with what had happened. And so for many, many years, I went through this depression, not trusting myself, not trusting men, and finally understanding why all my relationships with men were were strange and weird, and they were, how I showed up in those relationships, and finally started to understand that. Um, and it wasn't until in my 20s where I didn't know that I was suffering with depression. I didn't understand it, and so I started writing a story about a young woman who suffers with depression. But at the time, I didn't know that I was suffering with depression, so I called it issues. So I was writing a story about this woman who had issues, and when I was diagnosed with depression, I was like, she has depression, and book turned into that story turned into my novel, The Box, that I just published. Um, so so that's the story of what happened, why and it still affects me till this day. Me not trusting myself, I'm currently, um, separated from my husband and we're getting I'm just waiting for the final divorce papers because we went through it all. So, you know, and I'm not gonna say that it was a failed marriage or these failed relationships, it's these relationships that just didn't work out because I still have things to work out in here, what.
Let's get back to that word safety,
Mhm,
right? I mean, think about how important safety is to you and
mhm,
trust. I mean, think about the the challenge of trusting again
mhm,
and feeling safe with anybody. I
mhm,
mean, being violated, especially when you're young, breaks so much trust, breaks so many barriers.
mhm,
And then that desire for safety, needing to feel safe, wanting to feel safe, it's a tough one to break. I mean, it's a really wicked. And depression is people who've never been through it. I think everyone's had touches of depression. When I lost my wife 12 years ago to cancer,
mhm,
I went into such a deep, dark depression, but it runs in my family. Everyone in my family suffered from it. But it doesn't run in your family. It was just this incident that really took you down hard. This was a
mhm.
pretty big deal in your life. And you don't remember writing all the stuff about it?
I had not remembered writing all that stuff, but when I read them, I was like, "Oh, yeah." And the words were very, very familiar, but it wasn't in my, immediate memory, immediate
Mm,
consciousness, you know what I mean? Yeah,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm. So when you were writing the box, was it healing? Was it cathartic? Did it bring up more pain? Did it bring up I mean, what was it like trying to put that on paper
Mhm.
when it had been such a massive part of your life, of what you've been through?
Well, let's put it this way. I started it in my mid-20s, and 25 years later is when I published it. So, when I first started it, I it I thought it was a very good story, I liked it, I had an editor look at it, and she told me, what needs to be beefed up, how I needed to fix it, but then I found myself at times too depressed to even look at it or bother with it. Um, and then when I became a teacher, it was put on the back burner, and I would, pick it up, maybe every other summer or so, but it was very hard for me to continue working on it. There were times when it was very hard for me to work on it, and it wasn't until yes, that was hard. And there were times when while I was writing it, I would feel the feelings of depression and just like put it aside because I felt like that was what was making me sad. But it wasn't until I think I'm going to say 2017 that I picked it up again, and I was just like, I really need to do something with this. And when I read the whole thing through, I was like, this is a good story. Let me work on it again. And so from 2017, I worked on it consistently and then I had at least two other editors read it for me and edit it for me and I revised it according to what they said. So when I picked it up again in 2017, I had already been in therapy for quite some time. I had already dealt with my issues. So even though I would get into bouts of depression, now I was using it differently. There was one time when I was like in a deep, deep depression. I don't remember what happened. And I was just like, I can use this. So I started writing down exactly how I was feeling so that I could use it for my main character. And I was like, okay, that worked. I and if I get into depression again, I'm gonna use what I'm feeling. So yeah, that's what I did. And so it took a long time, but I got there.
That and you hear from a lot of actors, who are able to just can't quite get that scene, can't hit that,
Mhm.
can't get into that emotion, and then they'll use an actual feeling of
Mm.
past or something, an experience to take them there so they
Yeah.
can do that. But I'm fascinated by what you and your sister are working on with the other thoughts
Mhm.
for the books. There's something about going back to your roots. My family came here in 1509 or something like that, or
Wow.
1518 from Spain. And then my dad changed his name. I'm originally a Sanchez, but before I was born, he changed his name to Scott. I wish he hadn't.
Mhm.
Sanchez is so much of a cooler name than Scott. Sorry, all you Scots out there. But going back to your roots, getting deep into your culture, that's such a powerful thing. It's such a beautiful thing. I remember reading about Richard Pryor, and when he went to Africa for the first time in his life. Do you hear the story about what he said about that? American.
Mhm.
Anyway, so Richard Pryor went to Africa, when he could afford to go. He was rich and famous and stuff. And he was shocked. He was just shocked the effect it had on him. First thing he said is, "Where'd all these black people come from?" He's like, "There's no white people here. This is freaking awesome." And then he started revisiting the language that he used in a lot of his acts, a lot of his comedy routines,
Mm.
and decided for himself that he was no longer going to do a lot of that because he
Mm.
felt something he had never felt before when he went back to Africa and felt deep roots, deep connections. So I think when you guys go to Haiti, you'll be so much more accepted than you think. It'll be so much easier than you think when you go back to do what you want to do. And you know better than I do, there's massive suffering in Haiti. I mean,
Mm.
there's massive suffering in Haiti. So it's going to help you in a lot of ways. It's
Yeah.
going to help you not just with your books and stuff, but you're going to, if you allow yourself, it's gonna really take you to an awesome place. I
Mhm.
believe that.
I think so too. I feel like it has the possibility, the ability of being transformative, right? And it'll it, I'll probably it'll probably help me change the way that I think of myself in the world, or move the way I move in the world, as a woman, as a Haitian American woman. Um I've never I uh, like I said, we grew up in a Haitian household. My mom and dad spoke Haitian Creole to us, and we would respond back in English. Yeah, yeah, and but we understood what they were saying. We just once we went to school, it was all English. But and I love our food. I love our culture, the music, which is something that I didn't really appreciate when I was much younger. But I feel that I am somewhat removed from my culture, from my people, and it's up to me to make that effort to be moved by it, to immerse myself into that culture. And part of that scares me for some reason. It scares me for some reason. I want to do it and I feel it's important to do it. I have to do it. This is part of my legacy. But for some reason I feel fear.
Is there my first wife who passed, she was Colombian. Her
Mm.
mom and her 97 aunts, I think there's 97. Literally, there's like 800 people in her family. I've got one, right? I've got one person in my family. She literally had like 800. For her, like, one of her uncle's 80th birthday, there was 250 people there, and there would have been more, but not that many people could fly to Colombia, right? Because they didn't.
Oh, wow.
But she loved going back to Colombia, and like you said, she and her mom spoke. Spanglish, right? I mean, it
Mhm.
was constant Spanglish. Like her mom would talk to her in Spanish, and my wife would answer back in part English, part Spanish, right? It was just
Yes.
hysterical. And they always talked behind my back in Spanish because she didn't want me to
Mhm.
learn Spanish. But it's a beautiful language, and the South American Spanish is different than like Spain Spanish or even Mexico Spanish. It's a
Mhm.
very proper, beautiful
Mhm.
Spanish. But I remember how it affected her when she would go back to Colombia. But my thought for you is, could there maybe be some guilt about when you go back? Because it is Haiti's a pretty poverty-stricken place. There's a lot of suffering there. Is there maybe not just fear, but maybe there's something else that's keeping you from making that jump. There's nothing to be afraid of. They're your people. They're your culture.
Mhm.
You've got that blood running through your veins. They're gonna love you. They're gonna just ask you everything about America. Because America's not perfect. I freaking love it here. I've been born and raised here. You've been born and raised here. It's a great country. But it's not perfect. There's a lot of amazing places around the world.
Mhm.
You think about guilt. You think maybe there's a little guilt, or what do you think it is that's really deep down keeping you from making that
Um,
move?
I don't think that guilt plays a part, or maybe I could reflect on that. I think it's so I think it's more like embarrassment or shame. I really do think that it's
Would you be
embarrassing
ashamed of? What would
that
the shame where would the shame come from?
that I don't speak the language as that well. Um, anytime I would speak the language, people would laugh. Haitians who know the language would laugh at me, and therefore, in order to not be laughed at, I just stopped speaking it altogether. And when I do try to speak to somebody and I have to think of the words that I used to know when I was younger, but now that I have to pull them out from my memory, I feel embarrassed and ashamed that I don't know the language, that I don't speak it every day. I feel embarrassed and ashamed that I don't know more about my history, my culture. I feel embarrassed and ashamed that I'm not a part of it. I have not immersed myself in it like an everyday thing. I remember one time many years ago, I think I was in college in my 20s, I wrote an essay about how I've always been so proud of speaking um English properly, and where people look at me as a black woman, as a young black person at the time, and you know don't expect me to speak properly, but yes, I do speak properly as somebody who's educated and a black woman, but at the same time, I don't even speak my own language for my culture. Well, I wrote an entire essay on that, and the shame that it brought me, that even though I'm very aware of this shame, still have not done anything to correct it. I think part of that fear comes from shame and embarrassment.
It's interesting that you say that because when my mother was young, she was born in New York City, and her mom died when she was like a couple months old. She'd never met her mom. Her mom died from pneumonia, and she always felt it was her fault. My mom always
Mhm.
blamed herself that her mom died. So her dad couldn't handle it, so she sent my uncle and my mom to Guatemala, where
Mm,
her mother was from Guatemala. So from the time my mom was 3 years old to the time she was 13, she was raised in Guatemala.
mm,
So loved it, loved it. My uncle had to come back. He couldn't stand it there. He wanted to come back to New York. But
mm.
my mom loved it, right? So in
Wow.
Guatemala, you speak Spanish, but you
Mhm.
also have to learn English, French, and German. So you have
Wow.
to in school. Here's so my mom, blonde and blue eyes, right? My uncle's my I mean my grandfather says you got to come back to America, right? You got to come back. You're tired of you there or whatever. I don't remember why she came back, but so she comes back. So at this point, she's 16 years old.
Mhm.
She's been in Guatemala for 13 years.
Mm.
She speaks fluent Spanish, German, English, and French.
It's
So she
beautiful.
gets here. Now she's this little brown girl, right? Because she's tan. She's down there. She's tan. This little brown girl who mostly speaks Spanish.
Mhm.
And my grandfather had moved from New York to Beverly Hills, so he's in Beverly Hills, California, Richie, Hollywood guy, and she ends up this little brown girl in Beverly Hills, and when she
Mhm.
goes to high school, they're all like, "Who's this little beaner? Who's this wetback?" Right? And they're really mean to her.
My
And
god.
so she immediately stopped speaking Spanish, French, and German. She never spoke it again the rest of her life. To this day, she couldn't speak Spanish if you put a gun to her head. She couldn't speak French or German. She let it all go because of racism. And it's
Wow.
like, "Ma, who gives a shit? You could speak more languages than those idiots could." And she's like, "No, they were so mean to me. It was
Oh,
terrible how
that's
the
so
racism was."
sad.
But so I get what you're saying. It was a little reverse. Like my mom came here and now was shameful of her Spanish. She was ashamed of her Spanish. She was ashamed of her skin color. She
Yeah.
stayed out of the sun because she wanted to get her white skin back, right? To be
Mhm.
a brown, little bit. But it's tragic how that can affect us, right? So
Mhm.
now you want to go there and you're hesitant about your ability to speak the language.
Mhm.
But think about how when a Haitian person comes here and they don't speak the language, it's like, ah,
I think there's a different mindset, wouldn't you say, though? There's a different
yeah.
mindset. They come here first of all, I'm if I'm not mistaken, I know that there's schools in Haiti that, English is a requirement for them. Yeah, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when they come here, they're coming here for a very specific reason. They know that they wanna, make a life here, make a living here, and I I think that mindset allows them to be who they are and to learn the language and to learn the culture and be immersed in American culture while retaining, of course, their Haitian culture. Uh, being that I was born and raised here, I feel like I do have, I was going to say a certain privilege, not necessarily that, but I feel like I kind of wish that my parents made it mandatory that we speak in Creole, Haitian Creole to them. I wish that, because as kids, we're not gonna wanna do that, but if they made it mandatory because my parents were scary not to be messed, we would have done it. If they made us do it, we would have done it.
Well, that's what I used to always tell my wife. I'm like, "Look, I know you don't want me to speak Spanish because you talk to your mom behind my back, but you gotta teach the boys Spanish." I mean, they're they have more Latin blood in them and Spanish blood in them than most Latin Americans. I mean,
Mhm,
my mother had Guatemalan in her, so the
mhm,
boys had some Guatemalan. Their grandmother was born in Colombia, so they have that. My family's from Spain. I'm like, "Dude, how do you not speak Spanish?" Right? So it's the same thing. I really wanted my boys to learn Spanish, and I told them,
mhm,
and listen, you're gonna need it. You live in California for crying out loud. 50% of the population speaks Spanish. You're gonna need it. And that way you could talk to all your relatives when you go
mhm,
down to Colombia. You won't feel inadequate. You won't feel
mhm,
like, well, God, I can't communicate with them. See, and that's the funny thing. We don't think like, oh, well, they don't speak English, which almost everyone does. But like when we go down to Mexico, which we do a lot, I never feel bad that they don't speak English to me. Like, what's wrong with them? They should know English. I always feel bad that I don't speak their native tongue. Like, I
mhm,
should know Spanish better. It's weird how that is, right? I mean, so you're
yeah.
kind of feeling the same thing. You're like, I don't, if I go there, I don't expect them to speak English to me, but they expect me to speak Creole. Is it Pidgin? Is it Pidgin or Creole or
It's Haitian Creole.
Haitian Creole? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you'll pick it up. I have a feeling that from being around
Oh,
your folks and it being in your blood, I think you'll just start vibing with it really
mhm,
hard and you'll
yeah.
pick it up. How about your
I'm
sister? Does she speak Creole?
She attempts it. She's much braver than I am. She attempts it much more than I do. So therefore she's a better speaker than I am. But her Creole is also broken. Yeah.
How's the food? Oh man, Creole food's so good.
Mm,
Oh my
delicious.
God.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love it. I love jerk food. I love Jamaican food. I'm
Mhm.
just Caribbean dude. I should be living. That is on my bucket list. Once I become an international podcast superstar like Joe
Okay.
Rogan, whatever his name, I'm just gonna move to the Caribbean, and do this.
I love that.
I
That
mean, like I said, I love America, but I'll tell you what, there's something about just just stopping the world. We live in such a crazy world. The idea that you could just take what do you write on? Laptop, typewriter,
laptop. Laptop,
laptop.
sometimes I write notes on my phone.
Yeah. So imagine just sitting in the sand, just writing notes on your phone or with your iPad or something like
Mm,
that. And with all the stresses gone, I mean, you'd imagine that everything would just flow so much better, right?
that would be so nice. Oh, you're painting a very lovely picture
For me or you?
for me.
For both of us. We're going. I want to talk about Kathy's Cross. Kathy's Cross, depressives positive perspective.
Mm.
Depressives positive perspective. I love that. What's the deal with Kathy's Cross?
So, it came across to me that when I had just turned 40, I started a blog. I didn't understand why I was not yet married with no prospects, and I started a blog called uh the True Confessions of a Reluctant Bachelorette. Right? I love that blog. I would write about my disaster dates, and I reflected on, why am I not married? Why don't I have yeah, it was a lot of fun for me. But then I met somebody and I got married, and so I was like, I can't do the blog anymore. So I did a blog
Well,
called
that totally screwed up the blog.
I know, right? So, and then I created a blog called Tied the Knot, and it was all about my married life now. But then I found that I didn't want to share that. So, but I wanted to continue writing a blog. And so I really had to reflect and think about, well, what is it important to me that I do want to share? And then that's when it came to me that at that time, I was doing a lot of work on myself I was doing a lot of meditations, affirmations. I was seeing a therapist. I was exercising. And so there were a number of things that I was doing that was helping me feel good, helping me get out of my depressive state. And I said to myself, well, what if I write a blog about that? That I'm looking at all the things that happened in my life, these depressive moments, and I'm spinning it around into something positive. And so that's where that came from. So, and the idea of Kathy's cross, all these years as a depressive, I was bearing this heavy cross, and now I'm no longer bearing that cross. Now I'm lifting it high up ahead above my head, and I'm looking to the future. This idea of relieving myself of that heaviness. And that's where that blog came from. That idea for the blog came from. And I started writing about it, reflecting on, oh, I remember one time this happened, this is how I reacted. But now that I'm looking at it, this is what I see from it. I was just I was I had a I really liked that blog because I finally felt like I was doing something good with my blogging, right? Not something just fun or silly. I finally felt that it was my calling. And 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 I gotta admit, when I was going through my divorce, I was so depressed that I haven't even written it in over a year. And literally yesterday was the first time in over a year that I had published, and I published my first post in over a year. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And people just who haven't been there, just they have no idea how dark and
Mm,
heavy depression can be.
yeah.
It's like this hole, like just this
Mhm,
freaking hole that you're in, and
mhm,
it could be so dark. But
yeah,
now I'm thinking for you though, because 68% of Californians get divorced. 68%. Yeah,
wow,
68%. And I think it's
mhm.
still over 50% in the United States total. Maybe we need a divorce blog. Maybe we need to do your Kathy's Cross about the depression, but maybe we need to help all these gals who are going through divorce. I mean, I don't think I know anybody who hasn't been divorced.
Right.
I didn't get divorced because she died on me. She was so miserable in our marriage, she just died on me. She didn't just get divorced. But
Yeah.
God, divorce is so wicked. I mean, I'm a real estate broker by trade. I've been for 35 years. My son and I have our company. And I started doing this because I love talking to people like you.
Mm,
But I'll tell you, one of the first people they get called to when a divorce is coming is a realtor, right? You got to get
mm,
rid of the house. And I've sat at the kitchen table with so many people going through divorce. It is, it can be a really wicked thing, can it? I mean, it can
yeah,
really talk about going from depression to divorce back into depression. That's a
yeah,
wicked cycle, my friend.
yeah, it really is. And I don't think it's talked about enough in terms of the idea that you have decided to marry somebody. This is a legal contract. It should be dealt with as a business contract is dealt with. But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about it. Oh, because it's love. Screw that. I am so over that. When we were dividing, we didn't even have assets to divide, and it was still a laborious process. And I'm just like, what the? Like, all we did was say, yes, we got somebody to marry us. We signed this little contract. We got a piece of paper that said we're married. And now divorcing is like this whole big thing, thousands and thousands of dollars. And I'm like, are you serious? That's not talked about enough. I don't think,
In California,
uh-huh.
oh, it's wicked bad in California because you could meet someone on a blind date
Mhm.
and then drive to Vegas that night and have Elvis Presley marry you. And in less than 24 hours, you're married, right? In California, you have to wait 6 months to get a divorce. 6 months
Oh my
to get a.
God.
Now, look at, I married that douchebag in a week. All right. Now, you're going to make me be stuck with him for 6 months? That's insane. That should be illegal. I mean, that's against my personal rights, my civil
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's
But
I did not know that until a friend told me. I'm like, "What's going on with the divorce?" She goes, "Yeah, everything's worked out. Everything's great. We got to work through this stupid 6 month thing." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Yeah, California makes you wait 6 months to work through your stuff." I'm like, "What stuff? Crazy,
yeah,
right?"
that should really be at the like when people decide to get married, that should be the first thing like that they're told. Like you want to make sure that this is what you do, that this is what you want to do because you have to wait so long to get a divorce and it's going to be thousands of dollars and all this stuff. I really think that I mean, yeah, as much as we know now, the age of technology and all that stuff, people should really, really look into more so than they're doing now. The reality of it. Like, if you don't want to be with this person anymore, what's it gonna cost you? Think
That's
about
why so many people don't get married. They just date for 50 years, like that Goldie Hawn and what's his face? They've been
Kurt,
dating for
Kurt,
six. And
right?
the other, yeah, yeah, Kurt, which I like this. And the thing is, yes, it's a contract, right? That's why I think prenuptial agreements are really smart. I don't care if you don't have anything. Like I've got a
Mm.
cat and a bike, and I want a prenuptial agreement, right? I don't want you taking the front tire off my bike when we get divorced, right? I mean,
That's not
so
a bad thing to do, right?
it's not a bad thing to do. And I hear gals who are in my age bracket, when I was dating after my wife passed 10 years later, um, people would ask me like, so, are you staying in your lane? I'm like, what the fuck? What does that mean? And they're like, well, what age? I'm like, well, I'm 60. I'm dating 60-year-old chicks. I don't know. I mean, what are you talking about? They go, well, most guys your age want to date like 30-year-olds. I'm like, what am I going to do with a 30-year-old? Well, I don't even know what to even talk to a 30-year-old right now, let alone get married to her, right? But I think, first marriages, second marriages, third marriage, they get more difficult. The second marriages last less than first
Mhm.
marriages, mostly. So
Yeah.
your third marriage lasts shorter than your second marriage. You would think we'd figure it out, but we don't.
Gosh.
Not that that's what you have to look forward to. I don't want to
Eh,
depress you, but
I have decided that I'm not going through that again. I am not getting married again. That's not happening.
I
Mm.
said the same thing, and I'm remarried. After my
Oh.
wife passed, I
Mhm,
dated in 7 years. I dated three gals,
mm,
three awesome gals, and I'm
mhm.
still friends with all three of them. We're
Oh,
literally
nice.
still friends, like talk all the time type of friend. As I love them, they love me. We just weren't. It wasn't going to be a marriage. And then I married this one gal in like 4 months. I'm
Oh,
like,
wow.
dude, what did you just do? Yeah, she's cool. Um, but but to get back to the depression, I was not marriage material during after my wife died, right? I met
Mhm,
great gals. Like I said,
mhm,
I dated three great gals. We're still friends. And I remember the first gal I dated after my wife passed, and she said, "You know, I feel like I'm dating your wife because that's all you talk about." And I'm like, "Yeah, that probably sucks for you. I'm sorry about
mm.
that." But but the depression, it really is hard to open to people. That was something I felt I wasn't good with. Like, I thought the women that I were with were so kind and so open and so
Mhm,
giving. But
mhm.
I was a douchebag, I couldn't go there because I just didn't trust me. I just
Right.
didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel worthy enough
Mhm,
yet to be with
mhm,
somebody from
mhm.
the depression, you know?
Yeah, yeah. You weren't emotionally ready yet. Were you trying to, um, like, what made you decide to go on dates? Were people telling you, "You have to get yourself out there again," or did you yeah, do you feel like you did it because other people were trying to push you out there?
Well, a friend of mine put me on Match.com,
Oh, I
and
remember.
and I enjoyed Match.com. I met a lot of nice young ladies. Um, I didn't meet anybody. But I enjoyed Match. But the people that I were talking to on it were like, "This sucks. I hate this. I hope you find someone and get the hell out of here because being on this sucks. Dating sucks." I'm like, "Well, you're really encouraging." But, I think the longer you're single when you're old like me, for women, it it gets to the point where they're like, "I don't wanna be in a relationship."
Mm,
And a lot of women my age don't really want to. They have friends, they love to do stuff, they're traveling. But the
mm,
men my age desperately want to be married
mm,
because we're babies. Men are just big
mhm,
babies, right? We want to be taken care of.
mhm,
We want a wife and we want a spouse.
mm,
Um, but it's interesting how many women I know who just they don't want to get married. They don't even want to be in a relationship. They love their girlfriends, they love traveling, they love their life,
mm,
they love their cats, they love
mhm,
gardening.
mhm.
But I didn't feel that way. I wanted to be in a relationship.
Well, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I feel I'm not there yet where I wanna be in a relationship. It hasn't even crossed my mind. I remember one of my cousins was like, "You're so beautiful. Don't you want to be with somebody?" I was like, "No, I really don't."
No,
And,
no, I don't.
and I feel like um it it wasn't until I got a well, I separated from the husband that I finally became serious about my novel. That's when I finally set the date. I know when I wanna publish my novel. I wanted to publish it July 2nd, 2024. July 2nd is my mother's birthday, so I wanted to honor her. And I did it, and I did it. And I felt like when I was in my marriage, even though he often congratulated me and praised me for writing and for doing it and for, going along with it. It was his actions that were telling me that he didn't want me to do these things. Like when I asked him, eh, do you can you do me a favor and walk the dog in the mornings because the mornings are the best time for me to write. how long is this gonna last? And, and I was like, "Whoa, just this summer," things like that, that I felt in order to, avoid an argument, I felt like I silenced myself. There were a lot of things that I did or didn't do because I wanted to avoid any hardship with him. So I kind of felt like I was trapped in that sense. And I still did what I wanted to do, but I toned it down. I didn't do it always, you know what I mean? And that's why I feel right now that when I separated from him, finally started taking care of myself more. I finally published my novel, and I don't think I would have been able to publish it when I did if I was still with him. And I felt lighter when I was away from him. And maybe it's wrong of me to think this, but I do feel like if I was in another relationship, I would go back to feeling a little stifled. So that's
You know,
why
there's
I
something about, flow, you know, you have to have flow, you have to have just flow, you have to be able to be free and have
Mhm.
flow,
Yeah.
and, you know, a lot of people fail, not from the fear of failure, but from the fear of success. There's something about being successful that scares people and it keeps them from really going after it, even if they say they're going after it. But it's also the same way with a spouse.
Mhm.
And men in particular are really bad with that, where, well, I'm a man, so I can't have my wife more successful.
Mhm.
Or what if she gets famous and becomes a famous author? What's going to happen to me? Or how's it going to look if my wife makes more money than me? You know, a lot of men, even if they say that that's okay and they're supportive and all that, it really affects them hard. And so
Yeah.
they're like crabs in a bucket, right? You put two crabs in a bucket, one's always pulling the other one down. And his actions obviously spoke louder than his words,
Mhm.
saying
Oh.
he's being supportive, but his actions were not. And I don't want to pick on him. I don't know the dude, but it's interesting that a lot of men have that deep resentment about their wives being more successful than them. It's
Mhm.
hard.
Mhm. And I think it's just ingrained in them through society, the way our our social structure is, it's always been that men are the ones who are successful. They're the ones who bring home the money and all that stuff. I think it's just been ingrained in us as a society.
Yeah. I tell my wife all the time, "Hey, man, hit the lotto or, you know, get a OnlyFans page because 'cause you're hot, or if you made more money than me and I didn't have to work, that'd be freaking awesome. I just do my podcast, I could start writing, I do
Oh,
grief
that's
coaching."
funny.
I'm like, "I've got a lot of other stuff I could do if I didn't have to
Mhm.
work, man." So,
That's
knock
funny.
yourself out, go make a bunch of money. Sell pictures of your feet or something, I don't know. Um, but Kath, you've been awesome. I'm so grateful for your ability. I like to tell people that I love people who share all out. You know,
Mhm.
it's tough to talk to someone on a podcast or just in real life, people who are holding back a little bit, you know, and
Right.
I'm so grateful that you just share it all out. I mean, laid it all out there for us. And that's the only way to help people, right? I mean, we all hold back. And
Mhm.
so if you really wanna help people, though, you have to show your scars, you have to show your
Mhm.
boo-boos, you have to help all out, don't you?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That was one of the reasons why I felt so good with my blog. And I remember the husband had asked me, what do you get out of it, sharing all this personal stuff about you? And I thought that was such a good question because I really had to think about it. And I was like, well, I've been silent for so long, for so many years about what I was going through. And now I'm finally able to speak out. So not only is it cathartic, but what if somebody else was feeling the same way that I'm feeling? What if I can help somebody else? You know?
Like, a great man once said, the truth will set you free, you know, and when you speak
Absolutely.
your truth, when you speak your gift, when you're able to share, you never know who you're going to help. You never know who you're
Absolutely.
going to reach. Someone might be way down in the weeds, like you and I have been in the depression world, and
Mhm.
read your blog or pick up pick up Kathy's cross and look through
Mhm.
that and just go, dude, that's me. That's
Yeah.
me. I'm not alone. And 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 if Kath was able to come out of this, I can come out of this. And it's a day by day thing, you know. It's like
Mhm.
addiction. It's like being super heavy and needing to get healthy. I mean, it's
Mhm.
just a day by day thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It really is. And, we have to remember not to beat ourselves up over it.
Young lady, I am the king of beating myself up. I I I still say to myself in the 2 o'clock, "Did you really say that in 3rd grade? What were you thinking?" I'm like, "Dude, it was 3rd grade. Please go to sleep. Let it go, man. I swear to God."
Oh,
I
that's
just
great.
I'm the worst. But Kath, you've been amazing. Everybody, we've just been gifted with some time with Cathelina Duvert. Duvert?
Duvert.
Duvert. God, I'm just the worst with names. Yeah, Cathelina Duvert. She is the author of her first novel. The Box is a soulful exploration of resilience, forgiveness, and the transformative journey of healing. She also has her blog. Is it a blog, right?
Yes.
Blog. Blog is called Kathy's Cross, a depressive's positive perspective. I love that. Among so many other things that you're doing that we didn't even get a chance to touch on. So, Kath, why don't you tell us real quick? Wait a minute, before you go, I forgot. I always do one more thing. You were so engaging. I completely forgot what I do. And before we go, I always ask my guests one other question. I'm a guy, so I lied. I said I had one question with a what if you could question, which I give you, but I lied. I have two questions.
Okay.
I don't give you the second question. So my second question is, before we sign off here, is there a thought or a message or a quote or a saying or something that's really feels in Kathleen's heart, something that you'd like to leave us with before we sign off today?
That's a good one. I wanna say that you've stumped me. I'm I wanna I wanna say, to well, we've been talking a lot about fear, right? To try to not be afraid. I wanna say don't be afraid, but we're going to be afraid, right? What if I know. There's a quote, I don't know who says it. Oh, I love this quote. It says, "Feel the fear and do it anyway."
Hmm.
It's not mine, but I love it, and I
No,
think
it is a book. It's
mm,
on my shelf, and it is by it's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. Oh
mhm,
my good golly goodness. It's literally sitting behind me. It's a book from the 80s, and I've
mhm,
had it forever.
mm.
And I quote that all the time, and I always
Okay.
quote the author, but it's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways, and it's a
Mm,
great book.
mm,
And it's so true. It's so true. It doesn't, like Zig Ziglar says, and I said earlier, fear is just an acronym for false
mhm,
evidence appearing real. 90% of the things that we fear never come to fruition. They're
mm,
just our fears.
yeah,
And we like to hold on to them because it
mhm,
gives us an excuse for not doing what we really want to do.
mm,
And there's a lot of real fear in this world, a lot of real fear. You've experienced it as a 12-year-old girl,
mhm,
that fear. Yet you've you've come out of it. And a lot of people don't, Kath. A lot of
yeah,
people, the suicide rates among young people are through the roof.
Yeah,
because things like that happen to them and they can't deal with it.
yeah,
And here you come along with your amazing book, The Box, with your blog, Kathy's Cross, the work you're doing, speaking out. You're helping those people.
mm,
You are. So you felt the fear and you did it anyway.
yeah, yeah,
You've
yeah.
been awesome. All right, Kath,
Thank
tell
you.
us, Kathleen, tell us where people can find you. Where can they find your book? Where can they find your blog? What's your
Mhm.
website? Where can we get more of Cathelina?
Okay. So, you could visit my Instagram page where it's Cathelina Duvert. That's my handle. And I do have my own website, cathelinaduvert.com. So easy. And my book is on Amazon. It's on print, it's an ebook, and it's an audiobook for those people who are diehard audiobook listeners that like me. That's all I do is listen to audiobooks. So it's available all those places.
I love it. Well, you've been great. Guys, once again, we've been blessed with a little time with Kath. Go look up Kathy's Cross.
Mhm.
Go to Amazon and get the book. You can get it in hardback, or in book form, which is the only
Mhm.
thing I could do. Um, or audiobook.
Mhm.
Again, it's called The Box.
Yeah.
And you have been amazing. I'm
This
so
was such a
grateful
good
that you joined
conversation.
me. This has
Thank
been
you.
really fun.
Thank you so much
All
for
right,
having
guys.
me.
We will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Bye.